present Aero City Towers. The development, the idea of the development is that it's a mixed-use development which, in many ways, begins to look at issues to deal with Lagos in particular, which suffers from overcrowding, but where there is a huge explosion of new building, which will last for the next decade. Some of the existing residences, particularly on the waterfront, are under enormous threat, with 60,000 people living in those areas, which are to be destroyed by the local government. There were some interesting projects which try to deal with that situation. What we're doing is working with commercial group to look at making a new centre, the financial district, which would have replaced all of those existing dwellings, so that they have time to breathe, recover, and continue. So rather than looking at ways in which one might alleviate the current situation, we're looking at ways in which it might breathe and the government might be persuaded as a new centre might be developed. The site has a mixture of uses: healthcare, housing, general administration. But the base idea behind it is that it brings together these things in a new central hub that locates the area. It's along a mangrove front to the ocean, and we're going to look at the ways in which we can perhaps bring that back into usage rather than ignoring it for just simple small-scale fishing. You can see where the area is here. This portion here. And we're trying to make something which will attract a whole range of different sorts of stakeholders. So ignore the space people, they're not necessarily going to be living in the building. They just happen to be a cipher for a modern and current Africa. They begin to talk about a series of professionals alongside local people who would, through the building of the structure itself, begin to have a transition between different skills and I suppose in many ways, different possibilities. It acts as a beacon, and it would then open up all along this area here for future development. The ethos. As an inspiration, we've sort of looked, and this I suppose is part of the experiment, we looked at the ways in which hair could be used as I suppose, a generator of ideas. The interesting thing about these hairstyles is that part of their intention is to make you cooler. They keep your hair, they release air to skin, and also, strangely, they do funnel and hold the hot air up and above you. And I think in many ways, it's one of those great sort of creative arts that's overlooked as a source of inspiration. Quite often, inspiration comes from the ordinary, from the everyday. And we're trying to make use of that in some part. The building is made of a series of set elements. The Solomonic columns, which are showcased in the middle, have within them a groove, just as Solomonic columns do, into which a series of solar photovoltaics are placed. So as something's run, every single building receives the appropriate amount of sunlight which is used for low-scale generation. The bottom podium spreads out into a series of convention centres, shopping centre uses, and each tower has its own base use, local administration, healthcare, and the like, housing of different types, and there's a green tower. Because, I don't know if you perhaps don't know, but the nature of the vegetation and trees is low cover in the region, so food quite often has to be brought long distances. We thought perhaps if you could have a tower which was built incrementally over time, that you might grow within it and make use of the natural resources that are there. You might also then attract people to it who might then want to live and work within this environment. So that's the basis of it. You can see the zoning, the basic zoning of it. It goes out to the ocean where there's a barrage, which will collect a lot of the wave energy which is coming off the ocean. Because when you get close to the coast, the mangroves absorb it. They absorb it, and they also mean that you only get very low-level vegetation. You get a strange microclimate along that edge. Which mangroves are useful if you want to stop coastal erosion, but if you want to use them as a leisure facility, they're almost impossible. So as a result, what we're thinking is that we're able to make a new area which doesn't suffer from the same kind of tidal effect. And although I suppose Lagos is not known as a holiday leisure destination, it might in some way begin to change the perception of the area and the things which you can do there. And as a result, for many of the professionals who are moving back, that would be a very good thing. And also open up opportunities for people who would not normally have access to something like this. So it's like a landmark, which then begins to develop the surrounding areas, you can see from the zoning. Just in this little diagram here, which tries to show the various means by which the tower can be energized. We are hoping that this combination will perform the majority of the energy use and, I suppose, recycling within the building. We have reed beds which run out into what's kind of a car parking area around the building, which filter water. The water at the very top of the building is used to cool the building as air and so on goes through it, through the central dynamo in the middle. I suppose this is another variation of that notion of the things we're making use of. The building itself is clad in a bamboo skin. The bamboo is woven locally and then applied to the outside of the building to create a green loading microclimate around the outside of it. The idea being that you begin to control temperature and solar shading, and the basis of that would allow it to grow and to change over time. The similarity between the way the hair is woven and DNA thread, and then onto the Solomonic columns, we looked at a variation of what that might be as we began to develop it. But the skin and the bamboo around that surface, rather than smooth, clean, I suppose what we consider to be a very contemporary finish, the building itself is something that you can grow and adapt yourself. So you have the ability to change the nature of the skin of the building and how it works. The plans. Well, some floors will be just all office. Each one will have access to large balconies on the outside. You have a series of apartments at different types for different groups of people, and the sky parks. And the sky parks are quite important because it's through them that air is funneled and then is pushed up through the building and driving the turbines. You can see how this plan then begins to feed in to the rest of the development, which will be, in many ways, quite randomized because the company that owns this portion of land already has plots of things which exist, so it will become developed in a very kind of, I would hope, an organic manner over time based upon land holding. The use of the building, where government offices exist, hotels and so on, which begin to sort out the nature of that development. And this section here showing the nature of the cut that begins to make its internal spaces. In this, we're once again just looking at that in a very sort of clear sense, an early model of what it might be. The towers touch at 3 points with service floors. That's the initial study. They don't quite touch on the far side, but you'll see later they do. And the way in which the core is maintained vertically through the building, even as each of the discs moves around it. And then on to a little bit about the skin. We're thinking about using things called params to bring light in from the outside and also some energy within the thickness of the floor slabs. Because the plans are really deep, so to get good light within the depth of those plans is going to be problematic. So we're working at something which brings light into the center of those plans. So you get natural daylighting and you reduce the usage of artificial lighting. The other materials, again, are really they're fairly straightforward. It's about the way in which we're using them to create the structure. So the skin. In this is the base model for the nature of those woven elements. Over time they'll change, some will rot, some will go, some will be replaced. But they will do a job that you can also do, you can begin to weave. Within them there are balconies and balustrades, and so they become like a secondary skin as to how you'd like to see your portrait of it. And so you begin to almost personalize the tower by what you do and what you grow. a little bit more that shows, one, just how deep the plans are, and the nature of that skin as it twists around. These sky pods. So at each of these three levels, there are areas which are for public use. Little parts where people could, I suppose, relax, meet, greet. And also, with the green tower, is where we're going to have a variety of ways of looking at how you might have some kind of vertical farm. The interesting thing for us is that I think people would have thought we just put a bunch of cows in there and grow tomatoes. We think we're going to do something a little bit more interesting than that. There are a whole series of tech industries which are developing in Nigeria which would make use of this kind of facility, and they have nowhere else to be. It's almost like an analogy with the Nigerian movie industry. It's the second biggest in the world, but it's still an unknown concept. So, to most people. So I think these sorts of facilities could be quite useful.
Just one more.
Okay. So, we're running through at a fast rate. This is what the office is going to look like. This is something that you might get. So they make a comparison with almost anything else that you might see. Nature of the tower, what it might look like in various conditions, and finally, as some kind of cipher for, I suppose, a potential future. But no one has to sound. So this is the rough model of the potential for it. Address to Aero City Towers.